Hey everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to a video tutorial that I am calling Waiting for the Rain. So today I'm going to show you how I created this particular card. Before we get started though, I'd like to let you know about our two Facebook pages. One is called the Del Bello's Lounge. That's where all of the Lavinia products are showcased. The other page is called the Del Bello's a la carte. There we showcase all of the other products that Patty has currently in her store. Come on over and join us there. You'll see so many great creations. You'll make friends and you'll learn a lot of new techniques and get some great ideas for your own creations. And we would love to see what you make, so please continue to post on those two pages for us. The other social media platforms that we are part of are Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. You can join us there and find us there by searching the hashtag Del Bello's Designs. All right, let's take a look at this card. Today I'm going to show you a unique way to create clouds and show you how I make highlights on my silhouette stamps. Let's look at the supplies that we need for today. I will be using a white smooth card base that measures 4 1/4 by 5 3/4 inch. I will also be backing that with a blue card that measures 4 1/2 by 6 inches. Next, let's look at the inks that I'm going to be using. I will be using Distress Oxides in Faded Jeans, Hickory Smoke, and Weathered Wood. The VersaFine Clair inks that I will be using will be VersaFine Clair in Nocturne, Shady Lane, and Purple Delight. The stamps that I'm going to be using will all come from the Cardio line. I will be using Dogwood Daydreams. I'm only going to be using one leaf from there. Winter Breeze. And from this set, I will be using the tree and the girl. Taking Cover, I will be using the small mouse. This is a great set of stamps because there's so many different mice that you can use. Next, I'll be using the Textures set. Great set to have. I'll show you why as we move through this. And the last set is the Wildflower Woods. I will be using the 3 larger flower stems. The other tools that you'll need to be using if you'd like to recreate this are some sort of blending brushes. I have 2 different types here. You will need some type of an acrylic block. Any type will do, whatever you're comfortable with. These are the pegs from Cardio. These, I will tell you, they're great to use, but there is a learning curve. You need to practice with those. I will be using my Misty stamping tool. Other tools that I will be using. I will be using colored pencils, 3 shades of gray, a dark, a medium, and a light. Uniball Signo white pen. A Faber-Castell eraser pencil. A Posca pen in yellow, a bone folder, but it's not going to be used the way you typically use a bone folder. I'm going to show you a little trick with that. You will also need a piece of dry baby wipe. So I set a few out every evening to let dry so that I have them on hand. You will also need paper towel and scratch paper. I believe I have covered, take it back. You will need water and some sort of a cloth to clean your stamps along with your favorite adhesive. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to show you quickly one more time the card that we're going to create. And I am going to start with the cloud. Okay, there are so many great cloud stencils that are on the market. You can do that. If you would like to use a cloud stencil that you're comfortable with, please do that. But let me show you that it's not necessary to have a cloud stencil. You can simply use a paper towel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tear the edge of the paper towel, just like you would be tearing the edge of a scratch piece of paper for grounding. But this time we're going to just use it for the clouds. I try to get some variation here in the tear, some ups and some downs, to try to make it look a little more realistic. I'm also going to trim off. I don't need all this excess, so I'm going to trim this off a tad bit. All right. So let's get started on this. First, before I start to create the actual cloud, I'm going to put a base of the Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink onto my card. I just want a light coating. I am not trying to get an even coat by any means. I want variation. I am going to start off the card and just gently apply a layer of ink. I'm going to go down a little bit more than half of the card. For those of you that are new to this, when you start to add ink for your background, it's always best to start with a very light coat. You can see I'm tapping into the ink, and then I tap off onto my work surface to get off the harsh color. Again, building from a light base up to a darker base is always suggested. All right, just a little bit more here, and then we'll jump right into the clouds. Okay, let me clean off my work surface so I don't drag any more blue onto this at this point. Oh, let me get that dried off quickly. Okay, now with that piece of paper towel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it onto my card very close to the top. My darkest layer of clouds will be this top layer. I am going to continue using the Faded Jeans. This time I'm going to add a little more ink because I want this layer to be darker. And I apologize, or maybe some of you can relate, but I have to work at this angle. It's just much more comfortable for me. I am going to start on the paper towel and brush upwards to apply my ink. I'm going to stay focused right in this area initially. Now, the more I rub on this paper towel, the more the edge is going to become distressed, and that's okay because that's just going to create some more interest. I can lift to see if that's dark enough, which I believe it is, and then I'll move on to the next section. Again, brushing upwards, and I want this layer to be my darkest layer. A while back, as I was watching videos on how to create clouds, a woman, and goodness knows I cannot remember her name at this point because it's been so long ago, had suggested to start the clouds this direction, creating that very top line as the darkest line. It's a little, working with a paper towel is very easy, but it can be tricky because what can happen, as you saw, I tried to go in a circular motion and that will roll the edge of the paper towel. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just going to give you a different shape in that area. But just be mindful of that as you're doing it. And don't worry if it rolls on you. It's only going to add to the interest of the card. Let me make it a little darker in this corner. Okay, that's going to be my first layer of cards. Oh, cards, listen to me, my first layer of clouds. Okay, so I'm going to flip this. Instead of this direction, I'm going to flip it over. I have to twist my card again. I apologize for that. And I'm going to just lay the edge a little bit below the first edge of clouds. Now this time, I am going to gently brush my next cloud. I'm not going too far off of that edge, just creating enough of a line. I'm going to make that a little darker so you can see how easy it is to place this back. And let me add a little more ink. I'm going to continue along this line. Don't worry if you get the occasional streak of ink like I did there. It will all get blended in and you won't even notice it when we're finished. Now this layer of cards I did it again, layer of cards, this layer of clouds, I'm trying to make lighter than that top layer that I applied. Okay, let's take a peek at that. Try to get that. All right, as you can see, I've got a nice layer of I almost did it again, clouds building. I'm going to now switch out inks. I'm going to bring in the hickory smoke. Now the hickory smoke is going to give a lot more definition to these clouds. Okay, let's see how we do here. I'm going to vary the angle of the paper towel now just to create some interest. Gotta be honest, I'm not sure. I think this is a little bit dry, this pad, so I'm gonna have to play with it a little bit to see. Oh, no, that's good. It's looking good. All right, as you can see, I created a pretty cool looking cloud there. I might even add something here. Just seems like an empty space. So I'm going to do one line of clouds and then switch my inks again and use the hickory smoke. Now remember, the paper towel will start to fray a little bit, but that's okay. It's just going to create some more dimension in your clouds, more interest. And don't worry if your paper towel rolls a little bit. And as you can see, all I'm doing is like brushing downward. I'm not trying to go in our typical blending direction. It's just too impossible to do that with a paper towel. Okay, switching out, I'm going to grab the weathered wood and just add a lighter layer of clouds for my last layer. Now, most definitely, you will take more time to do this. I'm just trying to do this quickly for you so you get the gist of the idea in creating a cloud. All right, just one more little piece here and I'm gonna call it quits on my cloud. Now, depending on the type of sky you want here, do you want this to be a stormy sky? Do you want this to be not so stormy looking? All you wanna do is add a final layer of color over the entire sky. I think I'm gonna continue just with the weathered wood. This is a neat color. It's like a very light blue-gray. And I'm just going to blend all over this because this is a rainy sky. I don't want to see too many white areas in my clouds. Try to blend in that area that's a little bit streaked there. All right, I'm happy with that. All right, now I'm going to bring in my stamping tool, my Misty Stamper, and I'm going to get my stamps in place. All right, I pulled my camera in a lot closer for this video so that you can see the detail that I'll be working towards near the end here. So bear with me if you can't see all of the actual inking that's taking place. The first stamp I'm going to use will be the tree stamp that comes from the Winter Breeze set. This is a really unique tree. I really like it because naturally you can use this for all seasons of the year. Be a great winter tree. It would be a great spring tree where you could add buds, adding leaves to make it fill in as if it's summer. Fall, you could do all the fall colors. Just a very versatile tree stamp. Okay, so for those of you that are new, I'm going to just slide this over so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm taking my VersaFine Clair Nocturne, and I am going to just tap this tree, getting it nice and inky. If you do something like I just did where you hit the edge, make sure you clean it off. I'm going to give it another quick tap, and then I'm going to press this into my card. I'm going to let it sit there just for a few seconds. I like to use an air hockey paddle to rub it into my card. Just makes for a smoother stamp. Okay, I'm happy with that. That came out really well. Get into a habit of cleaning your stamps immediately. All you need is water and a good cloth, something that's not going to leave lint behind. You can use a microfiber cloth, anything that's lintless. All right, next I'm going to add the little girl. She comes from the same set that tree did. Let me move my magnet a little bit. Going to place her here. If you are not familiar with Cardio stamps, they have the sweetest stamps, I believe, that Patty carries. The animals and the little girl and the people and themselves. There are other stamps that just have like adult figures in it. They have such personality. Even though it's a silhouette, I truly see personality in each of them. All right, I got a good image there. All right. Next, I'm going to choose from the stamp set called Taking Over. I'm going to choose this tiny little mouse that will be looking at the sky in the same direction as our girl. And he too will be waiting for the rain. So I'll just tap some ink on the same way I have tapped ink on all of the other stamps. All right, got a good image there. Get him cleaned off. Okay, I'm going to now switch from using my Misty stamping tool. And I'm going to add my grounding now. And to do that, if you are new to this, what you need is a piece of scratch paper. I'm just using a piece of copy paper. Do not tear your paper like this. Could you use that edge? For sure, no doubt. But it's not going to be really nice. It's not going to be very well defined. So when you go to tear your paper, always tear as if you were pulling a check from a checkbook, trying to vary the ups and the downs. It's just, again, it just really is to create interest. That's it. I don't need all this extra paper, so I am going to do just a quick cut here. Get that out of the way. All right, let me bring my card back in. Again, I have to work from the side, folks. Sorry about that. First thing I'm going to do is ground the little girl. And when I do my grounding, I try to make sure each time I do it that the bottom of their feet, shoes, whatever it is you're trying to ground, is sticking out of the edge. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a small area of white peeking through. Really, that's not that big of a deal because you can always fill it in. There's ways to fill in that inked area. But using this Shady Lane VersaFine Clair, I'm going to use my Lavinia blending brush. I do have brushes for each types of my inks. And I keep all of my Lavinia brushes just for my VersaFine Clair inks. I'm going to tap off some of this excess ink. And I'm going to start off, and in a circular motion, I'm going to add my first layer of Shady Lane. If this is your first time creating some grounding, keep in mind that you start light and build. You can always make it darker, but you cannot always make it lighter. The bottom layer, I always want it to be the darkest because looking at it for dimension, I want that to be what's closest to me. Let me get a little more here under her feet. And there I have a good start. I want to ground my little mouse. Same thing. Make sure that his little feet is touching. You don't want him to appear as if he's floating. I'm going to try carefully not to get a lot of ink on my tree base. If I do, there's no harm. I can fix that with a marker. Let's try. I'm going to try not to. All right, there's my first layer of grounding. All right, I want to add a few more layers. Again, simply for dimension, create some interest. Use different areas of the paper that you tore. And this layer should be a little bit lighter than the first layer. Remember, you're trying to create interest in the landscape, trying to create a little more dimension. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. Just have fun with it. Be creative. All right. And now my last layer of grounding is going to be super light. And let's try to make this a little bit different by angling the paper. I am not going to re-ink my brush. I am simply going to use the ink that is on my brush already. Remember, we're going from the darkest to the lightest. This creates the dimension and the depth to your card. Okay, I'm going to be happy with that. Now, let me clean off my work surface just a little bit. Grab my paper towel. And what I'm going to do next is show you how I use this dry baby wipe. Now, if you watch videos from Cardio, there is a woman, her name is Laura Wen. And I learned this little trick from Laura. She uses a dry baby wipe. You don't want to use a paper towel. Main reason, if you look at that paper towel, right there is an image printed on there. There's an embossed area. You don't want anything embossed. You want this to be as smooth as possible, so try to smooth that out so that you don't have any lines. I'm going to tap into the ink, get some ink on that baby wipe. I'm going to rub it off to get any of the harshness off of it. And I'm very carefully going to go in and fill in those areas where it's awfully white. Could I have used a brush to do this? Without a doubt, I could have. Would it have been as precise? No, not at all. That's why I like using this method. You can get more precise with where you were placing your ink. I hope you're able to see this well enough. Let me tap off. This takes practice too, believe me. If you watch more videos with Laura Wen, you'll see, I mean, she can create trees and bushes all with this little baby wipe, which that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you just a small area just for demo purposes so you can see what I'm talking about creating bushes. So using that same method, tapping into the ink, get some of that excess ink off. Pick an area where you would like to make an appearance of trees or bushes. So I think I'll just kind of go like right here in this area. So I'm going to make a visual that will represent just an area of bushes or trees in my background. And all I'm doing is very small circular motions, creating this shadowed area of possibly a tree or bushes. I'll do another little area over here. This is going to vary a little bit from my original card because no two cards can be the same. And definitely when you're creating that sky, it's never going to be the same as what you did the first time around. So here I have 3 little areas that we're going to call bushes that are way off in the distance. Let me add a little bit more green here. All right, so those are my bushes. They don't look like much now, I agree. But in the big picture, when you take a look at it, it will look pretty much like some bushes in the background. Again, let me clean this off quickly. Now, taking that bone folder, I'm going to create some trunks, very distant trunks. Using my Nocturne, I'm going to dip the edge of that bone folder into the ink. I'm going to tap off some of the excess, and I'm just going to go in and tap this in my bushy area here to create what will look like, hopefully, some trunks of trees. And remember, these are in the distance. This is just taking your card up to another level of interest. And that's simply it. Now, honestly, couldn't you create grass the same way if you wanted to use your bone folder and some shades of green? You could create that area. Again, that doesn't look like much right now, but when you put it all together, you'll be surprised how it just kind of resembles those bushes back in a distance. Okay, let's get back to some more stamping. So now what I'm going to do is fill in my tree. I want this tree to be full of leaves. I'm using from the Dogwood Daydreams, the smallest leaf. I am going to use this small acrylic block. Now you could use the peg, the acrylic pegs that Cardio sells. They're really nice. They do take practice, like I said, but I think for this purpose, you're not going to be seeing what I'm doing because my whole hand is going to be covering up that peg. This way you're going to be able to see a little bit more of what I'm doing. So I'm going to be stamping in 2nd and 3rd generation of stamps. And I'm just going to randomly place my leaves all around this tree. And as you notice, I will rotate the leaf and or my paper so that I get them at varying angles. Now, why I like 1st, 2nd, 3rd generation stamping is that, you know, we all don't have all the different shades of green, or any color for that matter. I'm talking about green because I'm using it now. But I like the fact that, let's say this is the only ink pad that I had in the shade of green. And I want variation because when you look at a tree, you know there's variations in the shades of green. So by stamping in 1st, 2nd, 3rd generations, you can get different shades very easily. So it's not always necessary to have every stamp pad. It's great to have them, no doubt. But when you're first starting out, and I know like when I was building my stash, when I found out about 2nd and 3rd generation stamping, I was like, oh, wow. Okay, I can wait a little bit longer before I buy that next shade of green. So fill in this tree as full, as sparse as you would like. Let me just get a few more in here. Don't need to bore you with my ink stamping of leaves. All right, let's just get a couple more. Actually, okay, right there. You could do this forever, right? Okay, so there we are. Got that stamped in. All right, moving on. Let me get my stamp put down so I don't lose it. I'm always afraid of losing these really small ones. All right, I'm going to move on now and stamp in some of the flowers here. Using the Purple Delight, I am going to use the larger of this flower. And again, it comes from the Wildflower Woods set. Say that 3 times, right? Okay, using this beautiful purple shade, I am going to place 1 dark, 1 medium, and 1 light flower, making the darkest one look like it's right up here in the front with me, and then the other 2 fall directly behind. All right, the next flower that I'm going to be using is going to be this one that actually has real tiny looking daisies in it. I know it's going to be hard for you to see that. Just trust me, there's actual little round flowers. And I'm going to stamp with the Distress Oxide. Typically, I don't stamp with this. This is more of a background ink, right? But when you want something light, this is a nice way to get something light. Almost a watercolor effect, too, with this. I'm going to just stamp that one in here. See how nice and light that is? I didn't want anything harsh in that area. And then with the last flower, I'm going to use a VersaFine Clair in Nocturne. And these will be placed so that they appear as if they are the closest flower to me. I do not want to do any 2nd or 3rd generation stamping with these. I want these to really appear as if they are in the foreground. So just randomly placing these. All right, there we go. Let me clean off this. And lastly, I am going to stamp with the Shady Lane again. Another little trick that I learned from Laura Wen from Cardio Stamps is that you don't always need to use an acrylic block for stamping. You can actually use your finger. These will stick to your finger as long as you have a nice clean background. And the reason for that is you only want to use part. I only want to use part of the stamp. So I'm just going to have my finger on the part of the stamp that I want to use. Could you use an acrylic block and only ink that section? For sure. Again, there's no right, there's no wrong way. This is just a unique way, a different way. And I'm going to stamp off a little bit here. Let me grab my scrap paper here for this. I want to see what I'm doing. Okay, and I'm going to just add random pieces of grass into my picture. This is from that texture set, and it's just simply titled Textures. Oh, you want this in your stash. You really want this in your stash. I can't believe how much I use this in my card making. Okay, now I'm going back to the next level. And you see I'm using a 2nd generation to add these little pieces of grass. Remember, keep in mind, you want the lighter layers as we move back. Just going to add a couple wee little ones here and there, just to add some interest. Oh, I hope I was in shot. I'm sorry if I wasn't. Here, I'll do a couple more, make sure that I'm up here in shot with you. Again, just tapping off and adding. Yeah, I can afford to add a few more there. And I'll squeeze one in there. Again, it's just for some added dimension and interest in your card. Okay, let me get this out of the way. And I want to show you how I add the highlights using the Signo Uniball pen. Let me grab that scratch paper again. Oops, got stuff flying everywhere. Okay, make sure your ink is running, just scratch it off. If your inks are wet and you try to use a Uniball pen, sometimes the ink end will get clogged and you'll get kind of a buildup of ink, so just scratch it off. I've even used my wipe or my cleaning cloth just to clean off the funk that can build up on there. Okay, so this is how I add the highlights. I do a couple dots of white ink. Now this is a rather new pen, so the ink is flowing nicely. And then I take my finger and I tap into that ink and kind of smush it a little bit. I can pull it out a little bit if I want. And I work in very small areas, like 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more than that at a time. If you go too far, then the ink starts to dry. And that is how I create the highlight. I am imagining that my light is coming from this corner and it is striking the tree. So that'll give it, I went a little further on that, but that's okay. Again, this is a wet pen. I can get away with working in a little bit of a larger area. All right, so let me just add a little bit more as to where the light may be shining on these branches. All right. Now, what you can do is you can go in and add a little bit more. So when I do add a little bit more, I just really tap lightly because I want this to stay a little bit brighter. Let me show you what I mean. Do you see how those areas are just a little bit brighter? Just gives a little bit more shine to the tree. Now I'm going to attempt to do the mouse the same way. I'm going to give him a little bit of highlight under his chin and along his body. And it's really hard. There is no doubt it's hard getting into those areas because he is so tiny. So this is where my Faber-Castell pencil eraser comes in. If I feel that I've gotten white in an area, let me show you. There's a little bit too much there for my liking. So what I can do is I take my eraser and I literally press the ink back to the edge. This can be totally dry, I mean totally dry, and you can still come in with this eraser and remove some of that white. Now I'm much happier with that. Let's move on to the little girl and add some highlights to the umbrella. In the same manner, just dotting it on, and then I'm going to drag my finger through. I'll do a little bit here, and then I'm going to add just a little bit here on the ribs. Again, I'm not completely satisfied with that, so what I'm going to do is add just a little more white at the top, tap it off a bit, and then with that eraser, I'm going to push some of that ink back in to expose more of that black area. Same thing with her. I'm going to add some white on her arm. Pull that in. Start with a light coat and build to add your color. I'll do her leg, and I'm going to do her boot a bit. Now, there's too much white for my liking. Let me show you. Too much white on her leg and on her boot, so I'll use that eraser, push back. Now let's say you don't have this eraser. You can use a black marker and go over that white ink and it will cover it. So that's another way to do this. I like using the eraser. I feel like I have more control, to be honest with you. Now I always inevitably mess up her hair and her face every time I've done this. I always get too much, which I did it again. I got too much, but that's okay because we have a fix for that. I'm going to just push that back, and that to me is good enough. I am going to fix her arm up a little bit. To me, that's a tad bit too much there. I could keep playing with this, drive myself insane sometimes, but you get the gist of what we're doing here, okay? All right, now I'm going to bring in my colored pencils, a light, medium, and dark gray pencil. You can use any kind you want. Doesn't matter what kind you use. I like Faber-Castell pencils, but you can use what you have in your stash and it will work. I'm going to quickly create a shadow under her feet using 3 colors. I'm going to use the dark, the medium, and the light. Now I can use, there's several tools on the market to use to blend this. You can use your finger and just press and blend. You could use that dry baby wipe and blend that together. The dry baby wipe works pretty good for blending. Thing with colored pencils is you always want to start with a light coat and slowly build. You can always add to it, just like your ink. You can always add to it, but it's harder to take away. Now, you can use an eraser as long as you haven't created that waxy layer. And with any pencil, it's very easy to get that waxy layer because what it actually means is you've just pressed too hard. Once you have that waxy layer appear, and it will look waxy when you look at it, you will really have difficulty trying to blend that or remove it. Just going to give a little bit of darkness under this little guy here. I'm not going to add all 3. And I am going to just try to blend a little bit of that in. I'm going to do the same thing with each of the areas, not each of them, but some of the areas here. I'm going to add where the dips are in the grass. I'm going to add a little interest by creating some shadows, some darkened areas. All right, a quick blend of that. Now, as long as I don't have that waxy look on here, I could come in with that pencil eraser and pull back some of that color. It works just as well on this colored pencil as it did the ink. The only thing you have to be careful of, it will remove the other ink on your paper. So, keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to go up to my faux trees here, and I'm just going to add a little layer to ground those. And another little layer of gray here. Now, when it comes to shading, this is something that, some people like to do, some people don't. I love it. And I could spend a lot more time than what I'm going to spend today in shading things. I just want to show you quickly how I do it. Now, what I could do is add some more green, which I think I will, just to show you. Let's add some more green to make those bushes stand out just a little bit more. Let me see if I can get those to come to life a little bit more. Yeah, just a little bit. These ones are hidden by that flower. Let me just give a little bit more. All right, that just kind of gave that area. And again, what's nice, if you're not content when you look at this, come in with this baby wipe, add some more green, liven it up a little bit. I'm trying to rush through this, but you could take your time and really add more layers of green to make that pop. Okay. I think I might add just one more little area of darkness here, just to try to create a little bit more interest. To me, this is the fun part. I like doing the shading. All right. You don't need to watch me do any more of that. You've got the idea here. Just let me blend this out a little bit. Gee, some of my cloud actually ended up becoming part of my grounding, which is okay. That worked for me. Okay, let's add some Posca paint. Using the yellow, I'm just going to dab a few dots in to represent some little budding flowers. For me, less is always more with the dots. If you like to add a ton of dots, just go right ahead and do that. I just don't do as many. And I think I could come in here and highlight some of these areas of the leaves, but I think I'm going to pass on that because they're pretty vibrant right now to me. If I had darker green behind there, I would definitely outline some of those leaves like I did in my original, but I'm kind of content with that. So I'm going to leave the flower alone. Lastly, what I'm going to do is add just some highlights to the leaves in the tree using my white Posca pen again. I'm going to start at the base of the leaf and flick. By doing that, you will get a natural looking stem. Base and flick, base and flick. And with that flick, it creates a much thinner area in that leaf. You know, when you look at a leaf and you're looking by the stem and you follow the vein from the bottom upward, the bottom of that stem is most definitely thicker and it thins down as you get closer to the top of the leaf. So by doing it in this direction, bottom flick, you'll get that appearance just naturally. Don't worry if you're off of it. I don't think the leaf police will come after you. This just is a nice, easy way to add a highlight. Sometimes when this dries, it may not be as white as you want it to be. So just go back over it and give it another layer. But for today's purpose, we're going to stop there. I'm going to add my blue background. You know, typically I add black backgrounds, but I think it's fun every once in a while to change it up and use a colored background, or go ahead and use a patterned paper that you can coordinate with what you made. A trick to getting this centered is to stand and hover over the top of that card, looking at all four sides. I can't do that because my camera's in the way, and I know doggone well if I stand up, I'm going to hit that camera. So I just took it upon myself to stay seated, but that's just a nice little trick to try if you have trouble doing that. So here we are. The finished product. Our bushes look okay. I could really work on these a lot more to make them stand out and appear more like bushes. You can try that if you want. And like I said, if you watch Laura Wen, you'll see how hers really do look like bushes. But it's just a neat little way to create a visual. Here's our original. I think I like my second one better. I think the clouds that I tore from that paper towel came out a lot better. Okay, guys. Hey, thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to do so. I appreciate you making the comments. Definitely subscribe to our channel so that you can see what all of the other design team members make. And hope you have a good one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye now.